Alright, so hello everyone and welcome back to Satisfactory. So last time we left off, we were working on our Plutonium power plant, which we have here. And we haven't got much of this going yet, but we are making progress. So, let's see, the next step is we need to make some nitric acid. And in order to make nitric acid, we need to make iron plates, which requires that we make plastic, apparently. So, how do we make plastic? We get some water, and we get some polymer resin. Alright, so let's start with the crude oil, because that's apparently what we're going to need to do next. So, we're over here, and we just need 2.526 refineries, so just barely too many to overclock successfully. Bit of a shame. Alright, so actually, what's this factory over here? What are you doing? You don't have enough aluminum? Alright, well that's weird, but we're just not going to worry about that because that's a different unrelated factory. So let's head over this way and go to blueprint build mode so that things line up properly and get a bit more space back here. Alright, so that space now exists, and we are just gonna get a couple of refineries like this with the heavy oil residue recipe, which apparently they already have. So we just pop those in, and we need 101.44, and we have 3. 101.44.044 actually. Divide by 3 is some number, which I will assume is correct, so we get to paste those across now. And that we just need to get the oil in. So let's take the pipe and actually run it around this way, I think. I don't know. Things are always a bit wonky on the first floor of a factory frequently, because there's not quite as much space. Like, all the inputs are condensed into one area, whereas at later points in the factory they'd be all spread out to various locations. Alright, so anyways, that is that, and you get powered up. Soon, apparently, we're going to be able to daisy chain power, which will be neat, although, frankly, I don't know how much of a convenience that's even going to wind up being. Alright, so the heavy oil residue all gets made into petroleum coke. So let's just get another line of refineries, which we're going to need, I don't know, just like a generic one. This is 2 to 2 and we need it to be like 1 to 1, but that's fine. It'll just be slightly more wasteful than normal. Alright, so that's apparently lined up centered the same. So we just do that. And you get the petroleum coke recipe, and we need to make some weird number. So we need to add some things together for this. 120.191 plus 101.25 plus 81.8 692 is 303.133. 3.133 divided by 4. And we're going to have plenty of room for this. So all that goes in. Then this can connect across. Why is this marked 1? Oh well, it's fine. Guess we don't need that much anyways. But that's connected across now. And then we can get this power pole. So that those are starting, and then we're just gonna sink the petroleum coke for now. Obviously in the future we'll be using it for something, but for now we just sort of need to have it as an output. So let's make sure that these belts are fast enough, and that these belts are fast enough, and then we can get in a sink. There we go. And get a smart splitter. And out it goes. And then this just gets hooked up to a power pole. So there we go. And that is that. And now our polymer resin we can take down to make a little bit of residual plastic. So not even a full refiner's worth. So this goes in. Residual plastic. And this needs to be 16.841 total. There we go. So you get your polymer resin belt across. And then this is going to need water. And the water it gets is going to be the output of the non-fissile uranium, which I'm pretty sure that's these guys over here. So let's run over here. And yeah, so these guys output water and non-fissile uranium. So we're going to need to get this all connected up. And we're going to need a little bit more space out here. And we're going to have to jumpstart this whole system somehow, because this is one of those giant looping things. But for now, we're just going to build it as if it works, and then we'll be able to just manually place plastic into the machines later to get it jump-started. Alright, so this goes all the way across and doesn't go off-center like it was about to. And then it gets connected up to all of this stuff. Now, the water from this is going to be going into multiple different production lines, which is potentially going to be a little bit complicated, but should be fine. So for now, we just have to connect all this stuff up. And there we go. Now this pipeline just comes around here. And we need it to go down through the floor. So let's have that be like there maybe. And then it can come out this way. Down to this floor where it's gonna loop back all the way over to here. And who knows where this pipe is going to need to be for spacing purposes later, but for now, this should be fine. Let's see, where was it? It's here. Alright, so that goes in and should provide the water for our plastic. So now we have the plastic. We have to take our iron ore, which, let's see, where is that? That's all the way over here, I assume. Yes, so here's the iron ore, and this is apparently only 151, and it's being split 2 ways. So we're going to take the iron ore up this way and bring it out over to here. So this comes over this way, and we need to get it... I guess we could just have it go like this, and then run along this waste belt. We want to leave enough space for all sorts of stuff. Alright, so the iron ore is out here now. Now what we need to do is we need to split off 50 of it. So let's get a splitter and a priority merger, because that's normally what this sort of thing ends up using. So you go into that priority merger, and then forwards a bit, and we just have to figure out what we're working with here. So we have to get 50 out, which means split it into 6ths, take 5 of them, loop 1 back. So if we just do something like this, priority left. Okay, actually wait, this would need to be a Mark 1 belt for that to work, which means that this would need a smart splitter ahead of time. So you go into that, and then like that, so that. Now we just have to do like this, and then take the other 2/6 out of that. So we split it into, this is going to be 9ths, isn't it? We split it into 3rds, so then this just has to be into halves, so that doesn't need to exist. So we have 60 there. We split it into 20, 20, and 20. And then we split that into 10, send that back. And so then this belt should be 50. Alright. Not so bad at all. So then you just go directly into a single smelter, where you're making iron ingots, which we need to be overclocked slightly. I'm surprised that this is just using the default iron ingot recipe instead of pure ingots or anything like that. But it's fine, I guess. It's hardly anything anyways, so it's not like we're wasting a large amount of iron ore doing it this way. So this just goes back and gets powered up. Alright, so now we have our 50 iron ingots, and we have our theoretical plastic, which I guess we should get powered up like that so they can accept the polymer resin. So now we need an assembler to make coated iron plates. And that can just be in this general area. Gosh, building small things with like one assembler and everything is so unnatural feeling. And part of that is just because we are using power shards, so this is technically like 1.3, right? But There we go. So this assembler can then go in. We'll give it an extra power pole just to make sure. So this would theoretically make iron plates if it had access to plastic, which is currently not functional because we don't have any water, but that will be worked on shortly. So next up, we have iron plates. We have our recycled water from... Okay, so we have iron plates, we have water input, we have nitrogen gas. The next step is to make nitric acid, which is going to be a big chunk of blenders. And let's also do that in this sort of general area. So let's build this foundation out. And then find the blenders, which we'll do this. And just get you in however. Keep you all lined up properly like that. Alright, so nitric acid. We are gonna need at least, we're gonna need 4 of these, theoretically. So just another one of these. And I just realized that these are potentially facing backwards, but it's fine. That's why they're up on the top floor, so that we can mess around with the orientation a little bit. Alright, so these are now all set up. We need to give them iron plates down here. Which, okay, wait, no, actually this is just facing the ideal direction somehow. Okay, no, because we have 2 things. Yeah, that's fine. I got confused again. Never mind. What I was saying there was nonsense. Okay, what? Why did you do that? What direction is this? Why is this facing that direction? Please face the direction that I want you to be facing. Thank you. So now that goes out like that. This connects into the iron plates. And should be good on that front. Next we need the nitrogen gas and the water. So the water for this, the water for the nitric acid, some of it is coming just as fresh water. And a lot of it is being recycled. Wait a minute. I'm just like looking at this and I see a much better way of doing this. So we can fuel the residual, because the residual plastic is getting 16.841 water out of the non-fissile uranium output. But then the nitric acid is getting 16.841 water of fresh water in addition to all the rest of the non-fissile uranium. So if we just swap around and have the residual plastic just get fresh water, then that is just dramatically simpler, because it means that the water in this system is entirely fresh water. So let's take that out, find our freshwater pipe, and bring it on over. Alright, so we had just one freshwater pipe. So we just have to pop a junction somewhere onto that pipe and bring this water over here. Alright, so this goes around. and then it goes up over that and down and into there. Alright, so that should get the plastic going, which should get the iron plates going, which should be that. So now I need to copy paste all of this into all of these so you all have the right settings. Okay, but now I just remember that I need to actually overclock these, so I'm going to have to change the settings and then copy paste them again. So we need how much nitric acid? We need 300. So if you are up to 75, then that works. Alright, so now we have 300 nitric acid output. That's 300 water input. And a good solid chunk of plates. This belt needs to be Mark II. There we go. So that's the plates going in. And then we just need to get the water and nitrogen gas. So this is the water pipe. So what we can actually do is we can just remove that. It doesn't have to go through the floor at all. Let's take all those random pipeline supports out as well. And then we can bring this over to here, and in it goes. So this just comes around and goes into that. Okay, so we are going to need to get this booted up with some fresh water, which is maybe actually why Satisfactory Tools set it up the way it did. That would be clever if so. But we can figure that out. We can figure that out later. That would be too hard. So then the next thing we need to do is the nitrogen gas. So these pipes need to actually not be connected because they're 600 each. And we just need to bring the nitrogen gas up to there. And then that'll be done. Also, it seems like our train network is having issues again. Because why would it ever work properly? Ah, the trains. The trains have not been having a good time recently. That much is for sure. Alright, so let's get that out. And then the other nitrogen pipe is broken apparently, so let's rebuild it like that, and then you go forwards like that. Okay, so now we have to get this nitrogen over to there, which actually, let's take those out and have this go around this way. Alright, so this just goes around, and we're gonna be up on a second floor pretty soon, I think. Alright, so this just has to get a little bit further over. And that needs to expand a bit. So this comes over this way. And now we just hop over those belts like that. And that's not quite perfect, but it's good enough. Now we just continue bringing these guys across. And a little bit further. Alright, so now these can come over to this way. And now they just have to get up to the next sort of half floor that we have up here. So let's get a floor hole there. And that attaches into the floor hole. And that goes up. Then we just need to do the same on this side, which is it easy? Relatively easy to get in the center here. Alright, so then that goes through to there. And then over there and in. Alright, so nitrogen acquired. And the iron is here already. So the next step is to get the water, which, let's just confirm that the math here is correct. So this is 75 water each, which is 300 water total that this needs. Then we go over here, and these guys make 37.5 water each for 75, 150, 300 water total. Yes. So that is indeed correct. So now all we need to do is, let's get a junction in here and just try to get these guys to have their water. So this is just going to be strictly for getting the whole party started. Shouldn't need to do anything like over the long run. But we just need to get water introduced to the system so that it can then loop around a bunch. Alright, so that is in. And here we go. First chunks of nitric acid getting made. Alright. Then we're going to need... Actually, we're going to need this to have a valve up there just to prevent weird stuff from happening. And that should now be looping around. How is that train thing? Has it solved itself? Nope, it's spread. Alright. Fine. Back to the trains. Back to the trains and see what's wrong with them now. I really don't know why the trains have decided to all just stop working. Alright. So, what seems to be the problem here? So you are all the way back there, not even entering the main intersection because we're trying to get down to here. And this isn't working because the trains heading out this way are stuck. So why are the trains heading out this way all stuck? Why is that an issue? Alright, let's head on over here, see what happens. So these guys are all just waiting on the trains in front of them. This one... Okay, this one is interesting. Where are you going? You're trying to get into the quartz hub, which I assume is in here somewhere. And you aren't getting anywhere because something in here is broken. So that's quite the surprise. So is it this train here? No, probably not. This train... Yeah, I mean, none of these trains quite fit into their segments. So can I just, like, do that? No, because now that signal is looping into itself. Alright, so we are going to need to... We're going to need to build this back where it was, probably. So functions again. And can this block be moved back ever so slightly without having problems? No. Alright, well, we tried, but it looks like we did get something moving, at least. So, whatever the permanent problem is, we've solved the temporary problem. But we still have trains just sort of waiting in intersections for no good reason. So I don't love that. And now I can't see how this problem actually started. Which is quite the nuisance. But so now this should be fixed, and all those trains over there should just be waiting on this stuff to get functional again. So that should theoretically be fine. Yeah, the train system is pretty terrible at this point. We're really going to need to do some replanning on this thing at some point. Maybe that would be my goal after I have the plutonium power plant. I don't want to do major redesigns at the moment because of how much work that's going to be and how likely it is to not even work because it's very complicated. Alright, it looks like things are going fine right now. Like, that's all trickling through, and it shouldn't be too long before it gets resolved. Alright, let's just call that good and move on with our lives. So we're going to run back to the hub and then back to the plutonium power plant. And we'll be continuing to check on this situation if things don't fully resolve themselves. Alright, so back to the hub where we can get up here and there should be a hyperdrive cannon. Yep, there it is. Alright, and back off to the east we go. And hopefully things continue to work properly. So we can get back to what we were doing. Alright, so we're back down here. And there we go. Back to hover pack mode. Alright, so this now has plenty of water and the nitric acid output is now full. So let's get this filled up. Alright, so that goes in, and this just needs a pipe to go across. I think that pipe has ended in an awkward place for this, but it should work out anyways. Yeah, we're just gonna have to go over that way. No, don't open the console, please. I just wanted to build a pipe. Alright. There we go. So now this pipe should fill up with nitric acid, and we just need to bring it over this way. So you just pop into there, and nitric acid, check. Alright. Next up, we need sulfuric acid, which I believe is this one right over here. And we don't need, like, thousands of those, right? Right. Just normal amounts of each. Should be fine. So this pipe comes on over this way. And then it's going to go up through a floor hole. And it needs to go up to this one, because we can't have both of the fluids go in the same pipe, obviously. That would be bad. And then you just go across to there. And that is sulfuric acid. Check. Assuming it has the head lift to get all the way up here and then back down, which hopefully it will. Yeah, looks good to me. Alright, so that's sulfuric acid going through. And it should fill up all these guys one by one. So then we just need the uranium waste and the silica. So, uranium waste plus silica. Yeah, so we're sending 750 uranium waste, 500 silica. So here's our silica. That's going to be the next one, and it just has to go in here somehow. So let's get our splitters. Alright, that. How much per thing? 62.5 silica each. That's an annoying amount. Although apparently some of these are set up for that, but there's going to be even more uranium waste, so we're going to have to upgrade all of these to Mark II belts and lifts so that they can handle 62.5 per minute. Then we drop down to here and get the same thing going for these ones. There we go, and there we go. Alright, now we just need these belts to be Mark II. And then it'll be all upgraded, and then it can be up to building new stuff. There we go. All those belts are Mark II. Now we just need to send the silica into one of these. And if those are each 62.5, then these are going to be slightly more than 120. And I don't know why this is facing the wrong way again. So these need to be Mark III belts. And then these should be fine as still being Mark III belts. And then we just have to get the silica connected up. So that goes back to there. Right any center overflow. Our smart splitter is now set up properly. And we need this to be able to handle 500 a minute. And there goes the silica. Alright, that should be all good. Although it looks like it is buffering a little bit. It looks like that's getting through, and now we're all set at exactly the right numbers. Alright, so silica is in, sulfuric acid is in, nitric acid is in. We just need to get the uranium waste all the way over. So we need 750 uranium waste for this, and then the other 250 will be going to somewhere else. So, is there any reason to drag this whole belt all the way into the center of everything when we could just have it go around? No, let's just have it go around. So we're going to take that chunk out. And then this is going to go around this way. And we're going to draw the uranium waste all the way around this whole thing. And I'm going to have a bunch of it in my inventory right now, which we're going to have to deal with at some point. Alright, so now this is getting towards the right side of things. Now we send it around there. And let's dump my inventory out of that for now. Now we can drop down to here and get some splitters in. So you get a splitter and you get a splitter. Now each of these belts needs to be like 180-ish, which means Mark 3. To there and back to there. And then we need one more. And these probably need to be like Mark 4. And then we need... Okay, we actually need to do a very simple split here. So we need a smart splitter out here for this to go into. So you go into there. It's weird that I was that close without getting any radiation, but whatever. Then we say write any, please, autosave lag. Write any center overflow. Then this gets a priority merger with a conveyor splitter. So we need to get 750, which is 780 minus 30. So we just get a conveyor splitter there, which sends half of a Mark 1 belt back. And so then we have that with priority medium left. And then the other half of that Mark 1 belt meets up to here and goes through. So now we can grab from the center output of this, and that will be that. Alright. So uranium waste is doing its thing. Next up we need to deal with the non-fissile uranium, which we get 1,000 of apparently. So these belts need to be Mark 3 in order to keep up with 125 outputs. And then we're going to need the main line to be Mark 6 and go all the way through. And dodge all of those various pipes. And just get the upgrade placed across. Alright. So now we have non-fissile uranium. And I don't think that non-fissile uranium can be sunk. But let's just confirm that. I think you have to go all the way up to the fuel rods in order to successfully sink it. Yes, that is correct. Okay. That's fine, so we just remove that. And speaking of removing things, let's clear all these various ores out of my inventory. Because boy, do I not need them. Okay. Iron ingots taking up a bunch of slots in there. Alright, we're better off at least. So now this is all set up. And we have our non-fissile uranium. So we need to take the non-fissile uranium and the remains of the uranium waste to make plutonium pellets in some particle accelerators. So let's get that set up. Alright, we are going to need a whole bunch of foundations in here for this. And they need to be lined up like so. And take up a whole lot of space. Okay, I was not that far away from power, but I guess we're just going to drop out of the sky right over here. Alright, anyways, let's just fill this in this last little corner. And there we are. Alright, it is particle accelerator time. And we just need to get these guys in. Actually, did I ever make a blueprint for particle accelerator? I did. Cool. Alright. That's good. You need to be in build mode default for now. And we just need to set you up something like that. Now, how does this work exactly? You just go directly down. Okay. That's fine. So this is where daisy chaining would be handy, because we're going to need a whole bunch of power poles for this. Speaking of power, have I checked this in a while? Still looking good. Nothing crazy going on there. So, this particle accelerator recipe is not nuclear pasta, it is plutonium pellets. Alright, so we need 10 of these, and then 2 1 to 10 splitters. Let's see here. How much power is... This is going to take so much power, probably. But if we just do 4 of these, it'll be way smaller, but way more power intensive. That's fine. We have spare power. So that's 2. Then this one can snap, if it'll snap in properly. Please, there we go. Alright, so then that power goes to there and to there. And we need 1 more particle accelerator. Like that. Alright, so the particle accelerators are in. Next stop is plutonium pellets, and we need to make a total of 300 of them, which, yeah, this works. So we just paste these settings across like that, and then we're gonna have to get these set up. So we have our non-fissile uranium there. We have our waste, which can be up here. So let's get this area spread across. Now the non-fissile uranium is going to require Mark III belts, and the waste is going to require Mark II. So let's just get the Mark III belts in. There we go, and then down to here. So let's get these in. Alright. So now we just have to run over here and get the splitters in. So that connects over to here. And then we get this one, which is going to connect over to there. There, and there. Alright, so if those are 250 each, then by this point we already need 500 each, which is Mark 5s. To there and to there. And then this is our Mark 6 belt, which is going to come back here and get connected up to this. There we go. And then we need to get this stuff split in. So you have Mark II belts going out to there and out to there. Because it's the classic 62.5, just barely too much. There we go. And there we go. Alright, so that's 62.5, 62.5. So this is like 125 each. And then finally we get our full belt of 250, which just comes down to here. And let's just go another step down. Yeah, actually no, this might as well go up over here. So let's just get a floor hole just there randomly, and then fill in the floor out to that point. So there we go. And this gets that, and then we send this in. There you go. And you're set to center overflow, so that should work. And we just have to get you the rest of the way over. Alright, so this comes over here. And then finally it goes into there. Alright. So that is the uranium waste going into the particle accelerators. These should start up soon-ish. At least this first one should. It's going to be a little bit of time before they all get properly started. And then we'll have our plutonium pellets, which we'll have 300 of. That's 75 each, which means that these need to be Mark II belts. And then the main line needs to be Mark IV. So this all goes in. We have to do that awkward upgrade in there. And then that goes out to there, and look at that, we've got plutonium pellets all set up. Okay. So, that is a pretty big chunk of things done. Now, I think those still can't be sunk, so we're just gonna move on, I guess. Alright, so, plutonium pellets, check. Now we have, like, the rest of all the stuff to make eventually the fuel rods. So the next thing we need is, I guess, the rubber concrete. So we need 351 rubber and all of our limestone, and then we just assemble that. Alright, so our limestone, is that the only thing we use the limestone for here? Yes, it is. Is it the only thing we use the rubber for? No, certainly not. We actually have a bunch of things we use rubber for, so we're going to have to balance this. That's kind of gross. Alright, so that's the rubber there. And the concrete is this one. So let's just build this up in this direction, I guess. We might as well. It's as good a spot as any. So you are gonna go... Actually, do you need to go... No, you can be all on this first floor as well, I guess. So this expands out over to here. And we are gonna need some foundations. Alright, so the foundations go off this way. And then it feels like... It feels like I'm going crazy because the hover pack range seems to be like dramatically worse today than it has been in the past, and I don't know why. Alright, well, let's get our assemblers in. And we are gonna just go a full 9 of these. So we need more than 7, and I don't want to use power shards on this if I don't have to. Assemblers aren't that big anyways. Alright, so that is 9 assemblers. And we just connect you all the way across so that power exists. And then back to there. Alright, so one of them is going to have to go up a floor and the other isn't. Alright, let's just have the limestone just sort of... If we just sort of take that out and then we just sort of have it go up like that. We need 600 some limestone, so that's gonna be mark 5 or 6 belts no matter what. And then it can just head down over this way, where we will get it put in. So let's get the recipe set over here. So this is going to be... Scroll down all the way. Did I not select this recipe? I might not have selected this recipe. Alright. Pop up the MAM. And rubber concrete. There it is. Grab that. New parts. Why do we get new parts? Probably just means new recipe. Weird. Alright, so now that we have that recipe, we can go in here and rubber concrete. So we need 600 divided by 9. 600 divided by 9. There we go. So it's going to be Mark II belts on the limestone. And then not on the rubber. Alright, so are any of these Mark II belts already? Yes, they are actually. That's convenient. Good job past me designing this. Alright, so that goes in. And it's going to be like 74 each. How much limestone is it total? 660. So each of these is going to be a third, so it's going to be like 220. So Mark III belts here should work. And then we just pop that into there. And that's the limestone supply done. Then the rubber, we need just a little bit more than a Mark II in total. So all of these guys are going to be able to be Mark Is. And then we just need to get the rubber over. So let's just go over to here. And, okay, yeah, let's actually have this up on a top floor because we're going to need to do some splitting for the rubber, and it makes sense to give it space to do that. Okay. Rocket fuel sulfur is stuck in traffic, which could be very bad, but hopefully won't be. Hopefully it'll just be fine. Alright, so the rubber is gonna come right back up this way. And I don't know how fast it's going to be in total. Oh, 351 in total. So then we have that, Mark IV. And now we need to get 133.3. Let's see, that is a third of 400. And 400 is 480 minus 80. So let's get this set up then. So we're going to have a smart splitter that this goes into. Just like that. Then we get a priority merger, which is going to be 480. And then this just splits forward into this, and 80 is 2/3 of 120, so we get a belt there, and then we split 2 of the thirds into there, and loop them back into this with priority. So, this is 480, this would be, what, 360 plus that. So this is all set up. So this, past this point, we have a belt of 400. We then split that into 3. We merge 2 of them up. And then we put them back in there at medium priority. And then we have this, which should be our belt of 133.3. So now we just take this belt into there. And hopefully that is fine. Alright. So that is rubber check to make rubber concrete. So now we have 600 rubber concrete. So this main line needs to be Mark V. And it upgrades all along the way. Like that. And then this is actually something that we can put a sink onto. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to bring it over to where we were just a moment ago to make encased plutonium cells. Alright, so that is in now. Alright, now we take our belt of 600 and we bring them over to here. And this is going to wind up with 150 encased plutonium cells in a row of 30 assemblers. Okay, let's actually... We can actually just have that row of 30 assemblers be back here. That seems... I mean, this seems like a perfectly legitimate spot to put it. So, 3 assemblers, double floor. And the first one is going to be on build mode default, so I can nudge it around. And you go into there. Now I just need to get 10 of these blueprints in. 2, 3, and let's expand over this way for most of them. 4, 5, missing the reinforced iron plates. 6, so we're up to 6 now. Let's get power across to all these guys. There we go. And then all the way across to here. Alright, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these. We need 4 more for this to be completely perfect. So that's up to 7, 8, and this reinforced iron plate shortage is quite annoying. We can keep ourselves occupied by putting the foundations in for this. So let's grab these, and that goes out. Gosh, it would be nice if they snapped on well. Did that go through? No, that is correct. It looked like it got nudged a little bit up, but that's just because of how it looked when the next one was being highlighted. Alright, and then let's just add another couple over to there. Alright, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we need 2 more. So let's get these in. So that is number 9. And that is number 10. Alright. So that whole giant row is in. And we get the power placed across. Okay. Next stop is setting up all of these with the recipes. So these need to be encased plutonium cells. Encased plutonium cell. So now we just do a whole bunch of Control V and just get this across. So this should be 30 of these machines, which means we're going to need 1 to 10 splitters, which is marginally more annoying than most other types, but ultimately not that bad. And it's exactly 30. No need for underclocking or anything. So, step 1 is the 1 to 2. And we need to figure out, let's see, this top floor can be concrete, the bottom floor can be that stuff, just because I guess that makes marginally more sense. I don't know. So the concrete will have a short journey. So the top of the floor is concrete. Then each of these is actually exactly 60 per minute. That's convenient. We actually don't even need... We don't technically need to do the full balancing. We could just do a speed limiting setup. I think we are going to do the full balancing anyways. Just because it's not that much more hard. Alright, so this is all of this stuff going in. Okay, so now, do we just speed balance across? No, I think we do the full distribution. Which means we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these. Which means it is time for a 1 to 5 balancer. So let's get a little bit of extra space back here for that. And this goes in like that-ish. And let's just make all of these Mark 1s just for consistency. Although actually they need to be Mark 2s, don't they? Yeah, they need to be Mark 2s out here. Alright, so those are all Mark 2s. And now we just have to run the belts along. And you need to go out this way. And a little bit further. And into there. Alright, now we just need to get the other side in. So you just go... Did I bring you up a tick? I did. You must be very careful not to have your mouse move a single millimeter when you're doing this, otherwise weird stuff can happen. Alright, so that is in. Now this goes back. And all the way over to there. Then we just need this belt to go into that. And this will be center overflow right any. And that should get the concrete distributed across properly. So next up, we need to do basically the same thing down here. But it's half as much, right? So it's 10 per machine, which means that each of these rows is 30. So let's just get this all set up. And so the 1 to 2 rows are going to be 30, and then the rows after that will be the 1 to 5s, which are only going to need to be Mark 1 belts. Alright, this all goes in as usual. And gosh, there's something just very satisfying about placing a whole bunch of splitters like this. I don't really get the chance with like manifold setups to do it like that. Personally, I like it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. So then the center is here-ish, which is good. We sort of accidentally made it off-centered of the upper floor, which gives us a little bit more space at least. Alright, so then this just pops in like that. And now we just need to change all of these to Mark 1s. And now you go to there. You go around to there. And you go over to here. This is going to take a while to propagate through. That's what you get for using slow belts everywhere. But it's just so satisfying having them go at like the proper speed. Right. There we go. Done. Now we just need to get our... what's it called? Plutonium... what are those things called? Plutonium pellets over to here. And just pop them into that 1 to 5 splitter. Which is going to involve going down a couple of floors, but that's fine, obviously. Alright, so we're out here. You get a floor hole. And down you go. So then, we're going to need to get you even more floor holes to get down to this level, which is where you're ultimately headed. So that goes there, I think. And then the rest of the way down. Alright, so that is that. Now we just send it on over. So off we go. And we just gotta bring the foundation over this way. And just a little bit more. Alright, we're very, very briefly out of the range of power, but we're back. So now this just goes around here and into there. Alright, so that is the plutonium pellets. They now have a place to go. So that is that. And this gives us encased plutonium cells. Once it eventually gets through, which will take some time, this one should be the quickest. So yeah, like this machine here should be active pretty much right now. There we go. Encased plutonium cells are now being made. So we need 150 of these, but only 5 per machine. So the main line back here needs to be Mark III. Technically most of this could be Mark II, which it already is. So upgrading all this stuff back here is a bit of a waste, but it's nice to have good consistent speed belts, I think. Alright, so that, now we just have to run down this way and get all these. Alright, somewhere around here, yeah, here we are. We run into the part where we haven't upgraded yet. And we get all these guys slapped down. There we go. And a little bit more, and done. Alright, now, can these guys get sunk? I suspect the answer is no. But might as well try. So you get powered on, and sure enough, no sinking there. Alright, so encased plutonium cells are done. Which means that we're done with the nuclear part of this, and now we just have to move on to the relatively boring steps of the other stuff. So, next up, we're going to have to head back to figure out what our next part is, which I guess we'll do Caterium tempering, I guess. Make some quick wire. That should be fine. Actually, wait a minute. I just had a... So yeah, our power shard factory isn't working. I want to just go on a tangent and fix that, actually, so I can use power shards on everything without worrying about it. Now that was like to the southeast, right? Pretty sure. Pretty sure if I take this one down here. No, it was southwest. It was southwest. Okay, it's fine. We can do a complete pivot. And power shards are over this way. So, has it actually stopped working entirely, or is there just something else going on over here? Power shards. Okay, it's all green, but it's just not getting sent into the dimensional depot because we use all of them for rocket fuel. Alright, well, we need less ionized fuel than we did, because it's not like the only thing keeping us with power anymore. So let's just swap that. And while we're here, check other problems. So this is technically not 100%. So you are like 70%. But then the rest of these are going fine. So the problem is not enough dark matter residue output. How many of these machines are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there are 10 machines at 60 dark matter residue output each. It should be 600, which should be just barely possible to deal with in a single pipe. So, these guys who are taking the dark matter residue, that's 300, 450, and 600, and they're just not getting enough. Alright, so I believe this is simply a matter of the pipe not cooperating. So let's just fix that real quick, because I do want every single power shard we can get our hands on. Alright, so this pipe comes over here, and we're just going to run it on over until it finds its spot. Alright, so now you can just go down a little bit. Actually, you've already sort of skipped a floor, but that's fine. You can go down through here and over this way. So now this pipe goes around and it attaches in to this side, and that should solve the dark matter residue supply problems. Unless there's actually some other problem which I didn't see, but I'm pretty sure the dark matter residue output was the problem, and it's been solved. So that should give us marginally more power shards per minute, and there we go. So yeah, that should be all set. We're getting power shards into the dimensional depot, and we're probably going to have power shortages pretty soon, but not enough to break things, as we don't have the ionized fuel production anymore, and we're just going to be flipping back to regular old rocket fuel. Alright, so that has been fixed. Now we can go back to the jetpack and make our way back over to this. And there are still some serious problems going on over there, but we're just gonna continue ignoring the trains, because that is a whole process that I don't want to be messing with right now. Alright, so now we're back, we're back, and we need to get Cateriums. Okay, so we need the petroleum coke actually for the Caterium, because we're doing tempered Caterium for some reason. So we have our Caterium ore there, and our petroleum coke is over here, right? That's this one, but it's not doing anything. Okay, so we need a sink in this whole process, which let's just get the sink here on that side. So you get a sink and a smart splitter, and then that belt just goes forwards, and then we have left any into a sink, which should keep this whole production line running. So that's pretty neat. So that should get the petroleum coke production going again eventually. There'll be a bit of a delay before that happens, because we need this to make plastic, to let these guys make heavy oil residue, to let these guys make petroleum coke, but it should happen pretty soon. Alright, so let's build this up on the next floor, I think. Actually, so directly beneath us are those guys, but they have to do weird stuff anyways. Yeah, let's build this up on a new floor, just entirely, just directly above us. Alright, so we go like 8-ish up, and that should be more than high enough to deal with all that. Don't need that extra one. Okay, so now let's get a big foundation blueprint on this floor and just start placing a bunch of these guys down. Alright, so that is a start. Now, has the train system failed entirely again? It has, because of course it has. Alright, we're going to continue just ignoring that for the time being. And instead, we are going to get some foundries up here, which I don't think I even have blueprints for. No, I do not have blueprints for foundries. I need just more than 8 of them. So let's get them. Yeah, let's get them up here because they have 2 inputs, so we're going to have a second floor for them. That's what we normally do. Alright, then we get some giant blueprint squares up to here. And now we get in our foundries. And let's go with 9, because that's more than 8. It is a nice round number. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so half of these inputs need to be going down a level. So let's get all of their floor holes in. And off we go. Okay, there we go. Now let's get... Oh, we're going to have to select the recipe, probably. Pop down a MAM, go into the hard drive library, and tempered Caterium. let's run another scan because we have selected a couple of recipes today. So if we have 9 of these, then the correct number of splitters is every third. I don't know why I'm going in weird orders right now, but let's select the tempered deuterium recipe. And this is going to be 180.286 divided by 9. So then we can paste that recipe across all the way. There we go. And now we can go back to doing our splitting here. So that gets those 3, and then just another 3 here. Bam, bam, bam. How fast are these? Yeah, so none of these are more than 60 a minute immediately. Although we will need to get the deuterium more than 60 a minute pretty soon. So let's get these lifts placed in so that they exist for the next floor down when we set that one up. Now, doing this part manually without blueprints is a lot more work. You sort of don't really appreciate how much work the blueprints are saving you. Alright, let's say that this one is the deuterium, which means that each of these is going to be just ever so slightly more than 120. So that is that. Then we have to drop down here and do the same thing for the petroleum coke. Okay, no, don't get placed too low that you clip through the floor like that. Black Knight, hello. We are making a plutonium factory. Doing pretty good. Just working along at a plutonium factory. You know, designing all sorts of stuff. Right now we're getting the deuterium set up. Alright, so then you get some belts into there. And we just keep on going. Alright, then just one more of these sets of 3. And there we go. Now on to the back row, which just gets this one, and I believe these are each going to be like 40-ish, so Mark 1 belts are still good enough. Alright, so this is now all set up properly. Alright. So that's all set up. We just need to get the resources in. So let's bring that foundation a little bit further over. And here is our petroleum coke, which is apparently running at full speed now. So we need to bring some of this up. And I don't know how fast that needs to be, probably like 4-ish. Alright, and now is the hard part. We need to split this petroleum coke into some very uncooperative fractions here. So, we have 120.191, 81.692, and 101.25. How much time you need to grow your hair? I don't know, man. It takes a while. Like, I haven't really meaningfully cut my hair in years, but it also hasn't really gotten much longer for a while, so I don't know. It takes a long time is the answer. Alright, so we need to figure out how to do these ratios. So 120.191 plus 81.692. Does that combine into anything? Kind of. Alright, so 201.883. Please be a nice convenient ratio, 0.595. Okay, that's not a convenient ratio at all. Alright, how do we do this? How do we get the petroleum coke for this? The 101.25 part is easy. But the other ones which require insane ratios... Okay. So we need to either do some insane ratios or just give up and load balance it, and manifold it, which I'm not seeing how to avoid doing either of those. Alright. How absolutely insane do we go here? Because we could, like, get 120.2 and then split off like 9 thousandths. Is that at all reasonable? Okay. So this is definitely not getting better. Are you waiting for GTA 6? Not really. But that's not the sort of game I'm interested in. So we're gonna have to fix this whole train incident, whatever happened here, before we can continue thinking about that. So let's just go over here and do this. So what is the problem? So first of all, it's suspicious that you're just sitting there. But I don't know if that's actually causing issues. Or what. So let's head over here to this second group, because I think that's like the main problem, right? So all of these trains are stuck here waiting for something to happen in there, because this guy is here. And none of these guys are moving forwards, which is causing the problem. Alright, so this train here, where is it headed? You are heading to Northwest Quartz, so you're just trying to get out, which means going through that signal across to there, and then this guy being in this intersection like that is causing you to not function properly. Alright, what if we do something? So we take that pass signal out. We build you back in with new path signal there. And now you're going to be giving signal loops into itself. Okay, so why are you like this? Maybe if I dismantle and rebuild? Can you cooperate then? No, you absolutely refuse to cooperate. Alright, so what is your problem? You also have signal loops into itself? Okay. entirely know how to fix this. I didn't really leave myself enough space to do much of anything in here. Alright. Let's just try moving that signal entirely. Maybe just having this be a much larger area will work out. And then that needs to be a path signal. Alright, so maybe that will help. Maybe it won't. We are getting some of these guys coming out. So trains are moving again, which is nice. They are also just not having enough space to get all the way through the intersection still. Alright, so that is another source where that same problem can happen. So what if I just do the same thing there? Just make you a path signal, remove that other one. Alright, I do not know what consequences that change will have. But this guy is still waiting at this stop. Why are you just sitting here? You are heading to quartz. Is it just me, or have all the problems always been quartz? So what's going wrong with the quartz then, huh? Alright, so the plutonium quartz goes out, and off it goes. So why are you just sitting all the way back there when you could be moving up to this area? Alright, you are going through now. And then the train after you is moving forwards. And hopefully this whole thing will work out now. So you are waiting there. Are you also quartz? Yes, you're also somehow quartz. So the fact that all of these trains in here have been quartz, I don't know if that's just a weird coincidence or what. It might just be that the quartz is like the furthest in here that actually gets used, and that's why. Alright, so that is now going through. And once it gets going, it does just go all the way through, no problems. And then the next train is the copper train, and you go into there. Alright, I think removing those couple of signals might have fixed things entirely. So most of the warning signs have vanished. And these ones are probably just super delayed on how long it'll take for them to get fixed. Alright, that's all good. Alright, now technically we could like move this intersection over to there to make it so that there are less intersections for things to wait at. I don't know how necessary that is though. I think it's probably fine. Alright, so all of these guys are also waiting, but okay, no, they are moving actually. Just takes them a while. So that goes through and stops there. And all these guys are still waiting in their sort of shortcut around the intersections. Okay, why are you going so slowly? Oh, because you can't get fully in until you have space up there. Yeah, I feel like one of the things we need to do is we need to just minimize the amount of distinct intersections. Because like that is causing a whole lot of these problems, right? A whole lot of this is just train stops at an intersection, moves forward 6 inches, stops at another intersection. Alright. But it is getting through. So they are continually moving forwards, which is the important part. They don't seem to be getting stuck. Alright, so now you're going. Now I could have sworn I saw that one start to move and then give up, which is not exactly what I want to have happen. Alright. But that's all fine. Are there anywhere else that haven't started back up? Yeah, these guys haven't started back up. So what's your problem? Why are you so slow? Okay, so there's this sort of fake made-up intersection there, which doesn't connect to anything. This is a path signal, and it could be a block signal. And that's also true of this. So that should help a little bit, at least in just physically moving forwards, but this intersection here is not exactly ideal for getting in and out. And that's mostly the coal which is having that problem. Alright, that's fine. Okay, so that is all going. Trains are moving forwards. And yeah, we really just need to minimize congestion some more. So up here is the oil, and something weird is happening up to the north. So let's go and investigate whatever is causing that. So off we go. And it might just be that this is all delayed. Yeah, all these backlogs might be what's causing that to happen. Okay, the auto miner iron is not there right now, which is probably fine. Might also mean that we're low on iron, which would be pretty bad. Okay, so if we just go over here. Yeah, so this is all working. It's just slow because all the train traffic is slow. Alright, so that is fine. Just gonna leave it at that then. Yeah, everything here is working. There's just a whole lot of trains going in and out of this same general area, which is perfectly fine. Alright, the cooling system, literally none of the trains are in right now, but it is working, and it's showing 100%, at least on that side. Oh, no, this part isn't working. What is your problem? You aren't getting enough nitrogen. Of course you aren't. Alright, so if you guys aren't getting enough nitrogen for the cooling systems, then how long has that been? Okay, so this is saturated, so it's just not sinking anything. It's probably okay. Alright, then what else is there to do? Okay, did I just see cooling systems nitrogen? I could have sworn I just saw that train in the pop up there, but it doesn't seem to be physically present anywhere. So this is getting rubber delivered, and does it have enough rubber? Yeah, looks like it. And this is carrying a full train load, so that's great. Alright, have there been any new congestion since I've left? At least none that are showing giant warning flags. Alright. This is... But there's none that are showing giant warning flags, but it's like pretty bad. It's pretty bad indeed. So we are going to need to find a solution to that. And the only solution I can think of is like getting trains off of the tracks as much as possible. So I could find a couple of places which use not that much iron, for example, and then just convert all of them. Yeah, no, that's unsurprising. Yeah, so we have all this. Let's see. So we need to get it so that there are just fewer trains on the tracks, or physically more tracks per train. Really what we need is fewer trains per intersection. So what I think we could do, and like the sheer brute force way, would be to have like a second level of tracks which some of the trains go on. Like, for example, all the iron trains and all the copper trains have their own independent level of tracks which just drops down into the stations and then back up. And then all of those types of trains would never be in this whole mess. They would be on their own separate world, and they wouldn't be taking up space in intersections, and it would work a lot better. Downside is I'd have to run a whole nother set of tracks, and I need to go to like everywhere that uses iron or copper and fill them all and set them all out onto the new tracks. And that would be an absolute nightmare to do, so I'm not sure if I wanted to actually do that or not. But I clearly have to do something, right? Like this system that we have here is definitively not working at this point. So let's see how if I do that. So let's find like the rods production, for example. So this is one of the trains which has to run very, very rarely because it's just very low in demand. So if this, instead of going into this main line, if this did something else. So let's get conveyor ramp 1 meter, maybe. Let's see. So we have 1 meter ramps, and these are definitely narrow enough for trains to go up. So you're going to go up to there, and then... Okay, is this enough? Yeah, that's like more than enough. Okay, so, although it intersects with the signals there, let's go up 1 more. So now this is just ever so slightly higher than the signals on the first row. So we have this. And then, actually, we don't want just random rows of concrete. What we want is we want the train blueprint. So we need you to go in there, get nudged over to there, and then get placed. And this doesn't cause any problems for the existing trains. They can go under it just fine. Alright, so if we just run this along just all the way over here, and then all the way back over this way, and this is just going to be a sort of test setup. I don't know if this is exactly what I'm doing now, but it'll be something like this. And there we go. Now the question is going to be, can I slope these down and back up within a reasonable amount of space? And I should be able to, right? Like, we're just going to have it be over this way and then slope down that way, and it'll definitely be narrow enough then. So, like, if we just have... If we just have this, and you go out to, like, here, and then we have another one, which there's no way it needs to be that far away, right? You are going out to, like, here, and then you line into that. Alright. Now we just need to connect these up with the existing tracks. So you would come up this way and then continue up to here. And that is giving me a turns too sharply, because of course it is. So you can just go up like that. And you'd also have to go over like that. Then we have this one, which I guess... Can you get over there? No, you can't super easily. Alright. Well, what if we just... Yeah, getting this stuff up and down is gonna be like the major issue of this whole system. Because I don't want to have to pick up and physically move all of the tracks every single time. So we have this, then the input needs to come off of here and just sort of go down like that. Does that work? Okay, so I mean now we've clearly broken this, right? Like you are now saying you loop into yourself. Alright, so let's get a signal up there. And this is technically functional again. Alright, so let's just test this. So you go out like that. And you need to somehow combine back up to this other side as well. Okay, let's just do half of this on level. So if you just go like that and like that, and then this can drop down and connect in somewhere along here. Like that. And this is dropping down, so it can be as steep as it needs to be. So now we can just remove this intersection entirely from the bottom level and have it go only up to the top, which... Okay, so this top bit isn't powered because it's not connected up to anything, but it exists now, so this can be a block signal, as can that. And so that should be already just a mild improvement, just by removing this intersection. But of course, the trade-off here is that now this doesn't work at all. So we need to get this rod's production all the way back to our iron hub, which is annoyingly for this proof of concept, like all the way up here somewhere, I think. So I'm pretty sure it's one of these stations up here. I think it's that one. So I guess we're just gonna have to do that. And the good news is that we'll have most of this set up so that we can do it easily for the rest of them. So this, we're now just going to be placing all these rails, and hopefully we'll get somewhere fast with this. Yeah, this is actually just going to take ages. We have I had forgotten how absolutely horrible this was the first time I did it. Which is good encouragement to not do it a second time, but here I am. Don't think we really have that much of a choice. I guess we could just, like, technically connect this down to the main tracks just somewhere out of the way. Although I don't know where out of the way would even be. Like, certainly not anywhere on this whole main line. The east-west road is, like, the most busy place ever. So we're just gonna have to sort of keep doing this. And then we're going to have to connect a whole lot more of the iron trains up to this in order for this to be worth it. probably all of the iron and then all of like one other resource, maybe. Like all the iron, all the oil, maybe, because I know those are both pretty big. And then we'll see from there. I really hope I don't have to like do a third level. That would be awful. Alright, so let's just get all this stuff placed. And we just keep on going. Okay, so one of the things that I've learned is... Oh, now we're having concrete shortages. So one of the things that I've learned is that the more intersections each one encounters, the worse it is. So I think if I'm redesigning things, it would be better to have sort of like a branching thing where like most of the individual places you don't have to drive past every single option to get to where you're going. That would be a lot better, I think. Although I'm not sure exactly how to implement that. Actually, I have an idea, and it would actually be pretty cool. It's too late for this factory, though, of course. Oh, and then there's this. I hope that's not a problem. Alright, we do have a decent amount of headroom here, so it should be fine. Let's just pop a train on here to see. Yeah, this is fine. Alright. So now we're here, and we need to get the intersection in, which we just want this to be like basically identical to the one below us, so we just do something like that, and then this goes in. Let's see, how does this, can we just get this to line up perfectly even, like this? Yeah, that works. And then we just expand this row out a bunch. And then we can connect these on. So there we go. And we're going to expand that over that way, although we're not using that at the moment. We're going to have all of this for the future when we do need that. And we're going to need to run signals on this whole giant thing at some point. That will be the next job after this current one. Alright, so this just goes along. It is quite nice to just not have to worry about all of these intersections. So we just keep on going. And right, we can't place too fast or we run out of concrete. Alright. How is the traffic going in the meantime? Okay, it currently looks manageable. I wonder how much of that is just coincidence and how much of that is like the removing that one intersection just fixed everything magically. It would be super annoying if the latter were the case. Alright. We are making good progress, at least. Trying to get up to there. We're most of the way. But we do have to stop and wait every so often for the concrete to recover. Also, why do I have 20 billion all-clad sheets in my inventory? I don't need all those. I don't need that, or that, or that. Alright, concrete. is doing way better than it was. So let's just keep running these guys along. And hopefully we'll be able to get there. It feels like it's going slower now. It probably isn't. I mean, it's still going very fast. But it feels like I was able to place relatively continually for a lot longer than I have been recently. Alright, so we just have to get all the way up to the iron. And that should be just a little bit more. Yeah, the waiting is the worst part, definitely. I think when I built this whole thing the first time around, I would like stop occasionally to go hunting for hard drives and stuff. I don't really need hard drives. Although, speaking of which, we did technically finish a recipe recently, right? Yeah, so we just got some of the stuff back that we already had available, and we don't have any more scans left. Alright, so now we just get to keep on going. And when we connect up to the iron hub, we're going to have to make sure we make it so that the iron hub is connected to both sides of the train network. But I'm not sure. Yeah, so the destination is only connected to the top level. So that will still work even if the hub is connected to both. The individual trains will not have a choice of which side to go through. Because the trains will always pick the shortest physical distance path, whether it's congested or not. So we need to force them to spread out a little bit by doing it this way. Alright, so this, we just run this along. And we're almost there. Although this last little bit is going to be the more annoying part. Alright. Almost there. So we have a good amount of rail segments left. There we go. Okay, so this is basically where we need to be. So we just simply need to connect down to both of those. Okay, I guess we're gonna continue to have this work like a T-junction. So you go through like this, and then we're going to have our branch off over this way, and then have, let's see, then that will have to be its whole thing. Alright, so let's get this in. So you go out like that. You go out like this. And let's actually see if we can just get this going from this direction. Like that. Then we have to connect them into the other side as well. So like that. And like that. And now these just need to come up to here. And I don't know if this will work. I suspect it might cause problems. Yeah, let's do those connections differently. So let's have them drop down to like there. And then connect in from the side. Alright, so you are going to need to, like, do an entire turnaround, basically. Alright, so how do we get that turnaround to happen? It's going to require a whole lot more space than you'd want it to. Apparently that's still too much. Alright, so you have to come, like, out to here and curve around like that and then up there. Alright, so that is the output side done. Then for the input side, it should be more straightforward, just like that. That was a whole lot easier. Alright, so now this whole thing is connected up and powered. And the trains can go under it, no problem. But we actually have broken things ever so slightly because these are all one giant block. So we need to get all that going, and signal loops into itself. Of course it does. Let's see, you're a path signal, you're a path signal, you're a block signal. Alright, how does this signal just has to be like a little bit further back, and this block signal probably also just has to be a little bit further this way. Like that, I guess, although it's not ideal. Alright, so that is theoretically connected up in an incredibly, unbelievably cursed way. But it is going to require a lot more work to get fully properly set up with all the rest of this stuff, but it is a good start. Alright. Now, the next step would be to add all the rest of the iron trains up onto this upper path, and then that would solve congestion. But I think we're gonna leave that for next time. I don't know, I didn't sleep well last night and I'm a bit tired, so I think we're gonna wind up a little bit early today. Let's just head back down to our plutonium plant, see if anything has spontaneously broken down there that needs fixing. It's weird having this whole giant thing up here with no trains and currently no signals. And no intersections or anything. Yeah, it's definitely a bit eerie. But it's fine. So the nuclear plant is right down here. And ideally we can just sort of like make progress on both of these things in tandem. Whenever I want to take a break from one thing, I can swap over to the other. Alright, so we're going to drop down and then catch ourselves. Alright, so all of this is working. We have our iron ore going through. We have that. This is yellow because too much nitric acid. So yeah, the fluids are going to be all messed up until we can get something that we can actually sink. Okay, wait, no, this now has too much water, so that's actually the problem. Okay, so if we have too much water in there, then we can disconnect the supply of fresh water and just give a little bit of space. A little bit of space for these things to run on. So we don't need that much. We just need like enough space in here for the water to not be completely filling up everything constantly. So even if we just like do something like this, that should get the non-fissile uranium running. And I want to be careful because I don't want to get rid of all of the water. We do need to leave enough water for this to work. But there's all that nitric and sulfuric acid, so just leaving this much space should get it working again. And then without the extra water being shoved in, this should just loop the water back and forth indefinitely. And that should be pretty cool. So we'll see if these can all get running simultaneously. We might need to... No, we shouldn't need to also clear the nitric acid out. That should just be a given as these guys drain the water, are using the water. So yeah, like all of these are running currently, which should produce enough nitric acid demand for all of these to run. And that's just going to be limited by the fact that this one over here is at the end of the row, and so it's going to be sort of the last to get started, but it is getting started. So it is occasionally producing. Not as consistently as these first ones, but it'll get there. So this one gets first dibs on the water and on the nitric acid output. Alright, I think that's good. And then all the rest of these guys are presumably going to be short on non-fissile uranium since this got, or plutonium pellets or whatever, since this got stuck. So that should be getting unstuck now, which is cool. And then probably just saturating all of this as well, which they might already be. No, they're not saturated yet. So the good news is that as long as all of this stuff is running, we are using the uranium waste, which is expanding the length that our waste storage can last. So that's cool. Don't mind that being a factor. Okay, let's take out some of this spare nitric acid. Just because it seems like it needs even more of a jump starting. And we might have to come back and do this again anyways, once we get this all set up, because the plutonium fuel cells are going to backlog, and then all of this is going to backlog, and then this is going to stop running again. But hopefully it stops running in a stable state where it isn't because there's too much fluid output, so it'll just start up again once the fluid output goes away. Alright. So we still seem like we've got too much water in these guys. So let's just clear all this extra water out, see if that does it. Alright. Yeah, okay, I'm not going to continue fiddling with this. We'll have another look at it in the future. for now, I think we're gonna wrap up the stream here. So, thanks everyone for hanging out. I had a lot of fun. We made a good chunk of progress on our plutonium power plant. We're finally doing something like to properly fix the train congestion problem. So hopefully we'll continue to make future progress on both of those things next stream. And that's about it. I will be back in Satisfactory on Thursday. So I stream every weekday from 2 to 5 Eastern times, alternating between factory building games. So I'll be doing Factorio tomorrow, where we are continuing to build stuff in space. So if you're interested in any of that, I stream every weekday from 2 to 5 Eastern time, so make sure to follow if you haven't already. And if you have already followed, thanks, that's pretty cool of you. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks everyone for hanging out. Bye.